Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. My next special guest is Mr. Kevin Grevioux. Mr. Kevin, how are you, sir? Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Big fan.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. Well, I
Excellent.
mean, where does someone start when they look at your resume of the things that you have accomplished, my friend? From creator, writer, director, actor, voice actor, you kind of done it all, my friend.
Yeah, one of the things, one of the philosophies I felt I had to adopt in order to try to succeed is learn to kind of diversify your creative lexicon. You know what I'm saying? A lot of guys come into the industry, with I don't want to say myopia necessarily or tunnel vision, but they only want to do or think they can only do one thing. And that's not the way to succeed, really. You're going to have to kind of, cast a wider net because there are other things that dovetail into other things. And maybe, you should become adept at doing those things as well. Because really, if you're in the entertainment industry or you're working for yourself, you're singing for your supper, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're
yeah,
going to have to find a way to really make it so that you have multiple revenue streams. And that's what I've tried to do.
yeah. Yeah, I
Fortunately, I
think
like a lot of stuff too. So,
that always helps. That always helps.
yeah, most definitely.
Now, when you look at your career and you've done acting, voice acting, comic creator, writer,
Yeah.
I mean, you've done so many different things. After doing all of these things and creating this diversified portfolio, is there one within that portfolio that you find that you love the most?
You know what? I will say I probably love comics the most, you know, because I think comics are pure in their essence and in their, you know, the crucible of creativity that they are, you know. They were simplistic, the stories were simple in terms of being morality plays, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And there was a clear distinction between good and evil, and I like that.
yeah,
And I think that's what makes comics really special, interesting. They had a cliffhanger, they were action oriented. So, and they were, a lot of people don't want to look at it this way, but they were cheap. It was a
yeah,
cheap form of entertainment. In
yeah.
fact, I remember I came to the comics as a hobby late. I was I think 12 years old, when I started collecting comics because I was a model guy before that, models and
Mm.
Hot Wheels. And so Hot Wheels were over. I felt I had outgrown those. I was still, building models, but I got hooked into comic books and there was nothing like it. In fact, I remember, I think I was into the hobby a few months. And, back then, the comic stores didn't sell new comic books. It was mostly old, back issues, that's all they sold. And I remember thumbing through the issues and I stopped and I said, how in the world could I have missed this hobby? You know what I'm saying? All these years. I mean, I'm 12 years old, I'd only been reading for like 6 years. So, but yeah, I found it really fascinating and really accessible then, you know.
Yeah. Now, when you jumped into comic books, were you more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy? Where
I
did you
was a
kind of find
DC, I was a
yourself?
DC guy at first,
Mhm.
but and my favorite character was Superman, of course. But then, like I told you, I was 12 years old, but he did something that I felt was so ridiculously, you know, just stupid and silly that I said, you know what? I think I'm done with DC. And then I switched over to being a Marvel guy, you know, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah. I think you've done pretty well over at Marvel as well.
Why, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't think it was too long after you jumped into comic books, if I remember correctly, that Blue Marvel became one of your characters, right? Weren't you at a very young age when that character started to develop?
Well, yeah, I was probably 12 or 14,
Mhm.
when I created the character. I mean, look, all of us created characters when we were
Yeah.
young, and I was no different. But, I had this idea of the Blue Marvel. He was called Nebula then.
Mm.
And but when I got to Marvel, I said, you know what? I wonder if I could bring that character over to Marvel and put him in a story. And I came up with a pitch that I thought, might be able to lead him into the Marvel universe. Of course, I couldn't use the name Nebula, you
Mm.
know, but I said, this might work. And Tom Brevoort and Joe Quesada went for it, and the rest is history.
Definitely rest is
Yeah,
history. That's incredible. That's incredible. So, I mean, later on, right, how did comic books kind of lead into some of these other areas of your profession? I know you said that early on you realized you needed to diversify your portfolio.
yeah.
Did comics kind of lead you into voice acting, acting? Like, was it a catapult at all?
Well, here's what it was. When I meant that everything dovetails together, you realize that once you're a writer, well, there are other things you can write besides screenplays. You can write television, you can write animation, you can write comics. And even though comics might have been the thing that I gravitate towards the most as a hobby, I started out as a monster kid. You know what I'm saying? I like monsters first. And where did that come from? Well, dinosaurs. Because what are dinosaurs but real monsters? You see what I'm saying? And so that dovetailed into that. And I like science fiction. And so as a college student, I kind of sublimated my love for science fiction into a love for the hard and real sciences. And that's what I majored in school, microbiology. So I did that. So it's interesting how that come full circle and, get into narrative storytelling. And so, but, with comic books, it's like, it just opens you up to another world of creativity that's out there. And so, once I got into the industry, I said, you know what? I wonder if now I can take the time to actually get into the comic industry and see what that can do for me, if it's possible. And then that led to meeting people, who were also doing animation. So I started writing animation, you know. So it all, dovetails into, one another. And, it's just natural. Like now I can't see a person who wants to get into the entertainment industry not putting their hands in all of these different cookie jars because it's kind of natural as far as I'm concerned. So,
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Makes perfect
yes,
sense. Yeah. Yeah. You've worked on, from a voice acting standpoint. I had Joe Kelly on not too long ago, and I know
right.
you did some voiceover on Ben 10, which I think has won two Emmys, if I'm not
Well,
mistaken,
no,
maybe
I
three.
didn't do any voice work for Ben 10. I wrote an
Oh,
episode of Ben 10.
oh,
Yes, 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 yes,
nice.
yes,
I
yes.
saw you were connected somehow, but
Yeah.
that's a pretty good animated feature to be part of. They've done pretty
Yes,
well.
yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. It was fun. It was fun. I got the job through Dwayne McDuffie,
Oh yeah,
and I approached him at
legend.
Comic-Con one year after I did Underworld and told him I would like to get into animation. What can I do? And he says, well, you know me now. So we'll see what we can do. And years later, well, I was able to write an episode, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Can we talk a little bit? I've watched a few of your past interviews, and
Yes,
you've spoke on some of the folks that you've looked up to. You mentioned Spike Lee from a director standpoint, from a
yes,
comic book standpoint. Who are some of those folks that you looked up to? And then I would love to kind of turn that into Black superheroes and how
right,
important it is to you to be able to portray them in a certain fashion. Because I think when Blue Marvel was created, although there were obviously Black heroes, the
right.
background didn't align to your background, and you wanted
Yeah,
someone to come forth, right? That if you could kind
yeah.
of deep jump into that, that would be amazing, Kevin. Because I think it's
Okay,
important.
okay. So I guess my all time, excuse me, my all time creator is going to be John Byrne. He wasn't the first guy I liked.
Yeah.
The first guy I liked that I could remember was Jack Kirby. And, my favorite title, maybe not my favorite character, but my favorite title of all time is the Fantastic Four. That was my book growing up. And so, it was him. And then I like the Hulk, you know. Stan Lee was there as another creator that I liked, also Gene Colan. But John Byrne was really the total package to me. I thought his artwork was fantastic. I think he might have been in the third wave of the Marvel creators, Um, and I thought what he did was wonderful. I mean, to me, he is, after Stan and Jack Kirby, he is the quintessential Fantastic Four creator. And so it was really him, then later on I liked George Perez as well, so yeah, there have been a lot of guys, but John Byrne stands out to me as the most. Oh yeah, also Walt Simonson, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a pretty good core of creators.
Yeah, most definitely.
Most definitely, yeah. And then can you kind of talk about the creation of Blue Marvel and why it was so important that he be portrayed the way that you created him, especially at that
Um,
time when he came forth?
yeah, yeah. For me, there had always been a dearth of Black superheroes, and especially powerful Black superheroes. And I felt that the superheroes that they all had pretty much the same kinds of origins, like, and I don't think anybody meant anything by it,
Mm.
in a racial sense, but you know, what Marvel created, I think their first four Black superheroes all came from Harlem. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah.
Um, well, maybe not their first four, but because the Black Panther obviously didn't.
Yeah, Africa.
But
Yeah.
a lot of them came from Harlem.
Mhm.
They had criminal backgrounds, and it's like, come on, there has to be something else
Yeah.
there as a template as to their origins. And I just did not see that. Even at DC, they did even worse, And, I felt that when I finally got a chance to come to Marvel, maybe this is the time because, most of the superheroes, our favorite Black superheroes are all created by white guys. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
Like I said, my favorite superheroes are not Black and they weren't created by brothers, so race doesn't necessarily have to play a part in that. However, as a Black man, I felt that, hey, why don't I do something, a character that reflects my upbringing, my cultural sensibilities, what I went through, things like that. Just like the same thing with, like, let's say the creators of Superman. They were both,
Yeah.
two cool Jewish kids who like comic books, and they basically took the story of Moses and created, a template, for Superman,
Yeah.
and it worked tremendously. So, you know, and I like that. So I just did the same thing that, these other guys did and created the Blue
Yeah.
Marvel. And so I do think representation is important. Everyone wants to be represented. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't necessarily think you have to attach concomitant the social politics with everything. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Hmm.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It can make for an interesting story, or it can go too far in one direction or the other. But um, I do think that it's necessary, and so that's what I do with the Blue Marvel, and also my current characters, Gentara and Darkstorm.
Hmm.
In
Yeah.
my own universe.
Yeah.
So it's fun, and look, comic books are one of those things that have invited everyone to the table. Where I was from, I grew up in the suburbs. And most of my friends there were white. But I still had problems. Racially. I remember I grew up in the '60s and the '70s,
Yeah.
but it was always different amongst the geeks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you ran into a white guy who liked John Byrne. He said, "Oh, you know who John Byrne is?" I'm like, "Yeah, man. He does Marvel Team Up. Iron Fist. Oh man!" And all of a sudden, you're best friends. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
those are things that can bring us together, you know,
Yeah.
and I like that. I really do.
Yeah. Now, after going through that experience of creating Blue Marvel for Marvel, right? And now they own that character. I see that you've gone more to the indie side, and I'm seeing a lot of creators
Yes.
leave DC and Marvel and creating their own thing. We just saw it with Jeff Johns, was probably the
Yeah.
biggest one, right? With Ghost Machine. And
Yeah.
now they own their IP, which I think is really important for a creator and a writer. It'll be interesting down the road to see what Marvel and DC does, or if they do anything to kind of change how they pay creators in order to keep talent. But I feel like the indie scene right now is probably the best it's ever been with the
Yeah.
amount of stories and whatnot. And obviously with Darkstorm and what you're trying to do, I
Yeah.
think right in the middle of it. Do you kind of agree with that assessment, Kevin? Is there anything you can?
Yeah. 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 I do. I mean, I think Marvel and DC creatively are at a low point. I don't think they pay their creators well. I don't think they treat them well. In fact, I would dare say that I would tell any young or fledgling creator not to give any of your ideas to Marvel or DC.
Mm-hmm.
Keep them for yourself, because you're going to get more out of them that way. They might not get the same exposure.
Yeah.
You might not make the same, they might not be as popular, but I think overall it's better for you.
Mm-hmm.
But, and this part is kind of unfortunate. I think the indie scene is great. I met a lot of great people in the indie scene. I'm working with Lion Forge, Oni Press right now, doing a couple of things. You know, uh, in talks with companies like Mad Cave, Zenoscope. All of these are great, great guys, great people. Um, but one of the things that unfortunately Marvel and DC have done is they have created such a monopoly, um, with superheroes that none of the indies really want to do superheroes. And I
Yeah.
think people still have a love
Yeah.
for superheroes. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
just that, with superheroes, you can really push the envelope creatively,
Yeah.
and which is why I think comic book movies have taken over
Yeah.
because you can push the technology, you know, to its extremes and people love that stuff, but yeah, the indie scene is really where it's at. They're producing some amazing things.
Yeah.
Now I like Walt Simonson's Thor, and with Ragnarok, better than the stuff he did over in Marvel, with Thor. I just wish he'd do more, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, it's really, really interesting, really fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Now you created your own film agency as well. Is the
Yeah.
idea to take some of these IPs that you've created from Darkstorm and bring them to film, or is that something you haven't really?
Yes, most
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
When I look at my movie, I Frankenstein,
hmm
that was, my first foray into doing that. You look at the movie I directed, King of Killers,
yeah,
based on a comic book I did. It has not
yeah,
released yet, but I'm going to shortly. Things like that. It's a way to keep everything in house and
yeah,
make sure that you're able to take advantage of all the things that you can do. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I think that's
yeah.
very, very important
hmm
for up and coming creators. Um, learn how to look at an IP that you've created, and from that, generate different revenue streams that can
hmm
vector off of that. I think that's very important. Very important.
Yeah. And King of Killers, if I'm not mistaken, which I just rewatched the other day leading
Yeah.
up to this. I've seen it before, but I'm a big UFC guy, so GSP being in there was pretty
Yeah.
awesome, man. But
Yeah.
but was that the last thing that you've written and produced under your own label?
No, I'm getting ready to
No.
come out with another film that I can't
Oh,
talk
okay.
about right now.
Yeah, yeah,
But
understood.
yeah, but I start shooting that in December. And then
Nice.
I have some other things in the wings, so
Yeah,
those are coming up, in the
very
next
good.
couple of months, years, you'll hear about them. So
Beautiful. And
yeah.
how about animation, Kevin? Anything animation related, or is it going to be live action only for right now?
Nothing animation related right now.
Mhm.
I will tell you. Years ago, I sold a property to Nickelodeon called Monster, but that wouldn't have turned around. The rights reverted back to me, and so I'm trying to set that up as an animated series now. Um,
Yeah.
but there are a couple of things I have. A lot of things you don't want to talk about because you're not sure whether or not they'll come to fruition. Or
Yeah.
don't want to put stuff out there. But I'm trying to work in my way into doing other things. Video games. I've written a couple of those, or been a staff writer on a couple of video games, things like that. So, I got a lot of, irons in the fire, you know.
King of Killers would be a pretty badass video game, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
It's like Street Fighter. It's like, oh, you could do some crazy stuff with that movie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So after this King of Killers, then we kind of get back into Dark Storm Comics. When you go to your
Yes.
website and you see all these titles that have been created under your imprint, is the
Yeah.
idea to continue to build? And are you looking for other creators as you're starting to build out this brand, or are you really focusing more on your creations?
I'm focusing on my
Yeah.
creations.
Mhm.
It's one of these things where Darkstorm Comics and Media exists for Kevin Grevioux,
Mhm.
as a repository for, his IPs and creations. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's easier and cleaner that way, you know. And like a lot of stuff is on my computer that I've been creating for years, just haven't released it yet. Because really it takes a lot of money to create a comic book company with multiple titles. And until crowdfunding came along, it wasn't, really, economically feasible. You
Yeah.
know, now it's less cost prohibitive than it ever has been. And so you'll be seeing me trickle things out. And of course I write screenplays based on all of them. So, and hope to direct most of them or a great many of them. So, we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think your last successful Kickstarter was this last December, correctly, with the gym?
Yes, 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 yes,
Yeah.
Jintara. And we're
Yeah.
just now fulfilling. So
Beautiful.
yeah, 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 yeah. So we're fulfilling, I'm getting the digital stuff out there. The books just came in, so I'll be, over the course of the next 2 months or so, be sending out the incentives, things like that. And so yeah,
Excellent.
it's been fun. It's been fun. And then I'll be starting my next one soon. So
Nice.
so yeah.
Now, as you look at the landscape on the indie side of the business, are you seeing other creators out there that you kind of piquing your interest? There's a lot of really good stuff out there right now. I don't know how much time you got to fart around on Kickstarter and look at what everybody else is doing. Maybe you don't have that time, but
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
I
I
don't
really
know.
don't have that kind of time. I
Yeah.
just know that there are guys who have helped me out,
Hmm.
um, who I've been able to talk to,
Yeah.
that, have done, well and have funded. I mean, the guy at the top of the food chain to me is probably Eric July.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
he's been able to do is nothing short of phenomenal, you
Yeah.
know. And he has a loyal audience. Now I'm not gonna reach those numbers, but how do you can at least aspire to
Yeah.
something, higher than what I have gotten. And he's a guy. There's also a woman named Lori Foster,
Mm.
who's done some good things. With some of her Kickstarters is a friend of mine, Ryland Brand, who's done some things with his Kickstarter. So there are a couple of guys out there. I look at Graham Nolan.
Yeah.
He's done some stuff with his Aaron Lopresti.
Yeah.
I like these guys' work.
I just got my Kit Start Carter
Yeah,
just in the mail the other day. Yeah.
yeah, and another
Yeah.
guy I really admire,
Yeah.
Ron Garney.
Mm.
What he's done. I really like stuff like that, and so like I
Yeah.
follow everything that Ron does. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So there are guys out there doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, Kevin, I want to be super respectful to you and your time. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to meet you and talk to you. I'm a big
So,
fan of your work.
well,
Cannot
thank
wait
you,
for your
sir.
next crowdfunding event. And hopefully we'll hear something maybe December, January for this next either film or comic that you're working on.
Okay, that sounds good, sir.
Yeah. Let's stay in touch, my friend. Appreciate you spending some time with me. And I hope
Anytime.
you
Thanks for having me.
have an amazing rest of your week.
Okay, you too. Take care.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, bye bye.
All right.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.